All right, I'll start because we have 4 speakers and my talk is the most boring one. I want to get to the other people's talks. So as some of you know, I'm sort of education focused here in this school, and so last 2 years I've been researching about how we teach and how can we teach better. So my talk today, and the reason we decided to give this colloquium is that we realized there was a lot of interesting things that people do in our department, in our school, and other people are not aware of it. So obviously most of us do teaching, and sometimes you can have an issue where you're not happy the way your students respond, or you're not quite happy how your teaching is going, but you don't have time to think, or you don't have an idea what to do. So with these, we want to have once a semester this kind of talk where we portray what our people are doing. So just to give you an idea what's possible, or to give you contact with whom you can go and talk to about things that you might be interested to explore teaching-wise. So what I'll talk about is the first faculty-based SEED, which is Continuous Education Something Development module that I delivered last October. Sorry, you know
to hire someone just to dream up.
Monash, apparently Monash is the worst for the acronyms. We just slap, too many acronyms so nobody can remember them anymore. So it says for Continuing Education Excellence Development Program. So for those of you, and a lot of you were not here, 10, 15 years ago, we used to have the graduate certificate in academic practice. So any lecturer, any full-time lecturer would have had to finish this graduate certificate, which apparently was quite theoretical and boring. So feel lucky that you now have these modules. How I see it, I know there's the pros and cons of this, and I'm not going to go into it, otherwise we could be here 5 days. Just think of them as customized professional development. What you required is to do 3 of these SEED modules a year. Each of them roughly requires 6 hours of your time, 2 hours preparation, 2 hours face-to-face, 2 hours post-activity. So some of them are shorter, some of them are longer, just depends on what your interests are. But what's beautiful about this is that you can select what interests you. So if you have issue with assessment, you can pick a SEED that actually talks about better ways of doing assessment. If you're interested in e-learning, there's a module then you can then pick and learn about e-learning. What's good about this is that you will meet academics from other faculties who are also interested in e-learning. And what's good about diversity is that, if all physicists sit down and think about e-learning, we'll probably think about the same way of doing it. But when you talk about an artist or an economist or a biologist, you will see different ways of doing things. That's what I like about SEED modules.
Have many people done this? We were supposed to have done 3, but...
Yeah, let's not go into it. I'm just here to present the faculty SEED. So last year we had a call because most of the SEED modules are created by OLT, the Office of Teaching and Learning, or Learning Teaching, never sure. And they gave a call for the faculty-based SEED because they recognized that certain disciplines require certain novel things. That you can't always generalize everything. So there were 5 suggested, and mine got selected by the faculty committee. So we had the first run in October, and we had facilitators, Chris Thompson, obviously our ADE is a chemist, and we have Jerry Reiner, who's a biologist, and Barb McFarlane, who is our education designer for science. So there were a lot of scientists there in theory, and it was just for Faculty of Science. And I gave it a very simple title called Evidence-Based Practices in Science, but somehow through the process got named into this very, very long title, Measuring the Effectiveness of Teaching Strategies in Science-Based Disciplines. But just think of it as evidence-based teaching practices, right? We scientists, we like evidence. If somebody has 2 hours to do a module and we tell them, this is what we know works, that's all they want. They don't want to go and understand history of all this. They just want to be told what works, what they can try. And this is what we want to give them. So the whole idea about this module came, as I understood from some of this, I've done many modules of SEED, just because I find them interesting and because it's my area now. And what I always find is that lecturers are wondering, or some of them are wondering, is this really working? If I'm sitting there at the lecture theatre, I'm saying something, and then I say, everybody understand this? Of course, students just kind of stare at them, and then you go, okay, so we all understand this, let's go to the next chapter. That's what frustrates most of them. But they don't know what to do. Or even if they think they can do something, they think it's too much work to do anything that will entice them to talk. Of course, we want to understand why teaching is working, not just for the sake of our students. It's for our own pleasure. I mean, it's much more fun to teach when students talk back to you rather than when they just stare at you. But also, in terms of big picture, we know that high-level skills are needed. So well, you can say, well, I don't care if this student passes or fails because it's their problem. Well, the society tells you, no, we send the students there for them to teach you something, and you have to show us that you have actually put enough effort to do so. Otherwise, our university graduates won't have jobs because robots will overtake, by 2020, they will overtake all automated jobs. All low-skilled jobs. So any person who needs a job will need higher skills or university degree. If we don't provide them, there are alternative providers who will do that.
Somehow you've got to dumb it down at the same time.
Yes, it's not about dumbing it down, it's about being effective. Do you know you're actually teaching them what you claim you're teaching them, right? Just standing and saying something doesn't equate to actually teaching something. So what problem is when you talk to lecturers about this, how do you know that your students are learning? They say, well, I see the test I give them and I see the exam. Problem with this, of course, is the tests are mostly mid-semester tests, which is one point of data. And exam, of course, is the end point of data. You cannot teach students after the exam. Students don't even see the exam. They don't even know what they've done good or bad, right? They just see their mark. So those are not the data points that give you any feedback on how your teaching is progressing. So what we want is to be able to access how our students are using our teaching throughout the semester, so that when their test comes or when the exam comes, we're actually testing them on what we know we taught them, rather than testing them on what they don't know. So how do we do this? There's many ways. Can you please, if you've done the app, the Caper app on your phones, can you pull the app and answer this question? In your opinion, what is the role of a lecturer? Nobody done the app. Did you? Oh, yay. You all get lollies out there. So what is the role of a lecturer? To transfer knowledge to students, to inspire students to acquire knowledge, C, to read what's on PowerPoint slides, and D, all of the above. So please pick your field and lift it up to me so I can see the answer. Okay. So I can see a lot of greens, a little bit of purple, and a little bit of blue. Okay. So this is a simple demonstration how this simple app, you don't have to have fancy clickers, you don't have to have anything except this simple app. There is also a paper copy that you can bring to your students where they can just fold A, B, C, D. You don't have to. I know Tim went, he even cut for his students, he even colored, each, but you don't have to do that.
Went crazy.
He was one of those super keen lecturers who is working hard for his students. What I'm trying to say is that very simply, you just do A, B, C, D. The app gives you statistics, very simple statistics.
What's the correct answer?
Okay, you want to stay here next 10 hours? What I wanted to show you is there is a simple conceptual question. None of these questions might be right, but they're great to start discussion. If we have time, I would have got you to turn towards each other, show yourself what you answered, and then discuss, and then re-poll you again. This is what Eric Mazur is famous for, right? The peer assessment. But what I wanted to show you, it doesn't have to be elaborate physics question. It can be simple conceptual question. Even if you want to ask your students, did you find this assignment, did you find this test easy, challenging, boring? Even stuff like that is a useful feedback to you. And students will see that you care. There's 7 things that people identified by studying many, many good lecturers and successful students. There's 7 things they identified as a way of making it good. Number 1 is where the student feel you care about their learning. If you don't poll them, if you don't interact with them, if you don't engage with them, you basically dooming them, no pressure, you're dooming them of maybe getting out of university. Just so you know, that's research, right? Another thing I want to show you is we often talk about our learning objectives. So when a student joins your course, you have certain learning objectives listed. Whether they're yours or you inherit them from somebody else is not the point. But according to the society, we have to now prove, the tax are coming, and we will have to prove that our students have fulfilled learning objectives. Because our society wants to keep us in check, that we're actually doing what we claim we're doing with students. And usually you are encouraged not to have more than 5. But within those 5, you actually do a lot of things in your units. For my students, I created what I call learning plan, in which per week, because I have workshop type of classes, I could very easily break down per week or per session what is my local learning objective, right? And I can map to them how does that fit with the big one. But this wouldn't be a big deal. What I then do for students is that at any point, I ask them to do this 3 times in a semester. But if they just want to check their own understanding of concept, I turn them into questions. And I have this on Moodle, and I can check it at any time. You can also do this in lectures. If you have, if you teach 3 weeks, and at the end of every week, you want to understand what is they understand. So I turn one of these local objectives, which is this one here that I said, in week 2B, we will learn to operate simple telescope, estimate light gathering power, magnification, field of view. You can turn them into questions and say, how does simple telescope work? And the student can say, I don't understand this. Or, I think I understand this. Or, I understand this very well. What this tells you is whether you need to provide extra material or you need to prompt students to understand. Again, it can be a point of discussion in a class. So you can say, people, because you see them. The reason I like the CaperCap app is that you see who answers and who doesn't. You see who is engaged, doesn't. With clickers, you don't. So, very friendly, I can come to the guy and say, come on, show me your app. And they do, they love it. But this can be point of discussion. So I can say, can please person B explain what is it that maybe they don't think they know. I don't point fingers, but I ask them nicely to say. And I say, I don't care what you say. You can say, I don't say any of this. And so I'll say, I'll find somebody from C who is willing. After first week, they're more than willing to talk. My best moment in teaching is when in week 4, somebody asked, just as I was talking from my PowerPoints, a student asked the question, and another student said, ooh, can I answer that? This is what you want, right? When they feel comfortable, when they see that you're asking them these questions so that you can clarify things, and when you see that they share. So from one of my local, I can have 2 questions. What this tells students is they get feedback when they know. Students gave me feedback that this kind of quizzes gave them great preparation for the exam. Because they can go and know exactly what is it they have to study more and where they don't have to waste time. Of course, what you tell me is that whenever I've done my revisions, I knew what to focus on. So I will say, okay, 90% of you claim you know this, let's focus on this. So there's a simple way of doing this. And another example is, when I used to teach 3rd year, obviously you can't have many multiple choice questions there. You can, but it's a bit harder to come up with them. So after every lecture, because in 3rd year, you think students know a lot, but you have to remember that they're still novices in their field. In your head as an expert, all the knowledge is systemized and linked. In their heads, it's still being sorted. So what helps, after you present them 36 slides with heavy duty, physics and maths, what helps at the end is to reduce the noise and tell them what they need to focus on. Because in lecturing, there's a lot of storytelling. And for students, it's sometimes, especially when they're cognitively overloaded, it's sometimes hard to figure out what is it that you want from them. Did you show me this equation and you want me to know how to derive that equation in the exam? Or you're showing me that equation and you want me just to use it? So having this summary after lecture where you focus their learning progression helps tremendously. I know Alexis uses. What also helps you is when you're giving exam, you know what you ask them to focus. And then you're testing them on what you claim you taught them. Otherwise, as I interview students, They said what's exhausting is about sifting through textbooks and the lecture slides and the labs and trying to figure out what of these they need to prepare for the exam. They know it can't all come in the same depth, but they struggle. That's where the exhaustion comes from. When you have things like this, it's very obvious. So from question like this, I can create 20 questions related to this. So then I know I have tested my students to what I claim to have taught them. And you would think this automatically makes everybody pass exam, but no. This is where you see which student taking this seriously, which student taking your teaching seriously and that unit, and they will do it well. And those who didn't, they will fail. And I love how in 1 year, one student said, oh my God, this is exactly the same like in the summary. I recognize this from the summary line, but I kind of thought it won't come because it's too easy, so I didn't do it. So I can't answer this question.
What about asking them to think deeply about something like in the old days?
Sure, that's the whole point, but you need to focus their deep thinking. They have 4 units, 70% of our students work. Facebook following makes them read 1,500 words a day. They're different generation, they live in different worlds. What your job is to facilitate their learning process. So if you don't, it means to them it says, I don't care about your learning. I'm here to tell you, I'm here to show off how great expert I am. And I don't care whether you either do this or you. So these are some examples. My whole point is that my seed unit, one of the learning outcomes is to design the instrument of how to gather information about effectiveness of your teaching. Most people teach just 3 weeks. Some people teach multiple units, but 3 weeks dispersed. Within your little block, you can still do this. But the whole point is that you then, when you ask the exam, they feel that you have actually paid attention to what's easy for them and what's hard. And you have mediated that. So in my exams, for the last 2 years since I've done this, I can correlate my in-semester marks with my exam. Rather than having in-semester marks, 85%, everybody's doing well, and then exam, everybody fails and we need to scale up. When I interview students about that experience, their words were, it doesn't matter, I knew my results will be scaled up. But what this tells me is I'm not good enough to continue. And this came from male and female students, not just female students as you would imagine. So learning experience that we provide for our students through all this, through the teaching and through the exam, is what matters in keeping them to be our 2nd and 3rd year students, to keeping them in being our honors and PhD students, if they see that we care. So I'm going to wind this up because, as I said, everybody else has more interesting stuff. But if you're welcome to join us, I'm not sure when our seed's going to run next. I will advertise as well as other seeds, and I encourage you to pick seeds that would make more interesting for your unit that you teach. Thank you.